Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about why I chose a home cockpit over simply sticking with VR and some pros and cons. So every now and then I get a few questions along the lines of, why spend all this money when VR can technically provide more immersion? Well, there's a few answers to that. First one for me is tactile feedback and muscle memory. I fly G1000 Cessnas in real life, so having the real SimGear G1000 panels with all the appropriate buttons, feel, and menus helps me not to fumble with the units in the real thing, especially when I'm not flying that often. It's way easier to turn an actual knob or click a button versus clicking and spinning a mouse wheel to tune a radio or change autopilot settings. Second, copying clearances.
ProFlight 682 is cleared as filed, maintain 3000, expect 17,000.
I've found this one near impossible to do in VR. Just as I use the iPad with the Apple Pencil in real life, I can copy down ATC clearances from services such as VATSIM and Pilot Edge without issue. The only way I've even tried to pull this off in VR is by looking over my nose with headsets that have a nose hole. However, not every headset has that feature, and it kind of hurts my eyes to do so, so it's way easier to write things down in the home cockpit. Third is being able to interact with and pull charts when instrument flying. When flying IFR, you need various departure, arrival, and approach plates, including airport diagrams and the AFD, etc. Now, while there are third-party plugins such as Navigraph Charts, Avatab, and OVR Drop, just to name a few, these overall just feel too clunky in VR for me. Trying to hold my head still and click and drag various charts and procedures is just not an enjoyable experience for me. There are some exceptions with aircraft like the Phoenix Airbus. It has a really user-friendly EFB that keeps a majority of the information easily accessible. It also helps that the built-in Phoenix EFB is fairly large in size, which makes it easy to read and navigate. Fourth on my list is Cockpit Flows.
Start checklist, bus voltages. We're looking at over 24 is good. Prop, clear prop. Aux pump on, ignition, start.
This one's a bit of a toss-up because it's probably easier and more intuitive to run a cockpit flow in VR since you're seeing the actual aircraft. The only drawback would be interacting with knobs and switches. This is where I prefer the home cockpit because you are receiving the feedback that you flip the switch as well as being able to grab, look at, and confirm that it is in the correct position. Fifth for me is readability of instrumentation. Now, while VR headsets have increased in resolution and FOV over time, it's still hard to read certain instruments, although most of the primary instruments are fine. However, I think the next generation of headsets with future refinements in lens and resolution and FOV will probably make this a non-issue in the not-so-distant future. In conclusion, VR flying is fantastic and probably the closest experience to flying an actual airplane. I think a quality VR headset coupled with a full motion platform would probably be the ultimate in-home simulation. However, it's still just a little too clunky for me to use certain things. Even taking the tablet use case out of the equation, it's still just a bit too clunky for me to tune a radio or adjust autopilot settings. So for the VR pilots out there, do you have any ways that you pull charts and such into VR to make instrument flying easier? Let me know in the comments below. As always, you can see the home simulator live in action on twitch.tv/AviatorChris. Be well and fly safe.